Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters in purpose, there is a force more powerful than failure, more potent than fear, and more effective than talent. That force is positivity. You were not designed to live a defeated life. You were created to dominate, to multiply, to subdue, and to reflect the nature of your Creator. But hear me, you can never manifest what you don't mentally embrace. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Not so he becomes, so he already is. Positivity is not a motivational slogan. It is a spiritual strategy. It is the unseen architecture of breakthrough. The reason so many people remain stuck in cycles is because their mouth keeps rehearsing what their faith is supposed to be reversing. You keep saying, I'm tired. But your destiny is saying, I'm ready. You keep saying, nothing ever works out for me. But heaven has already declared, I know the plans I have for you. There is a conflict between what you confess and what's been spoken over you. And let me tell you, your agreement determines your alignment. You cannot walk in power while feeding your mind on poison. You cannot expect joy while entertaining bitterness. Positivity is the atmosphere where faith breathes and miracles are born. Do you know why darkness had to flee when God said, let there be light? Because his words were not just commands. They were creative containers. He wasn't describing what he saw. He was declaring what he desired. And if you are made in his image, then you carry that same creative force. Your words build worlds. Your declarations are blueprints. And your attitude is either constructing a prison or a palace. Let me say this to you, you attract what your mind agrees with. A negative mindset will repel divine appointments. A bitter spirit will block divine connections. But a positive spirit, rooted in faith, grounded in truth, will pull destiny into your direction. Do not underestimate the power of praise in the midst of pressure. Do not despise the small steps forward just because they're not yet giant leaps. Positivity teaches you to see the seed and not despise the size, because even the mustard seed, when planted, becomes the greatest of trees. You must speak like you believe, think like you trust, and act like it's already done. Positivity is not pretending, it is prophesying. You are not ignoring reality, you are imposing a greater reality on your circumstance. Your mind is the gate to your world. Everything you experience externally is first processed, filtered, interpreted internally. Your mind is not simply where thoughts reside. It is the command center of your reality. The most powerful force in shaping your future is not your circumstances, not your education, not even your upbringing. It is your mentality, the condition of your thoughts, the direction of your focus, and the atmosphere of your inner world determine whether you rise, stall, or sink. And this is why you can place two people in the exact same situation, and they will produce completely different results. One will flourish while the other will flounder, not because of the environment, but because of the internal environment of the mind. A negative mind will always sabotage a positive life. A person who is surrounded by opportunities but cannot recognize them because of mental fog, fear, or a defeated inner voice will never rise. You don't need a new season. You need a new way of thinking about the one you're in. Life doesn't happen to you. It flows from you. That's why the scripture says, guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it flow the issues of life. Your heart, your inner world, your thoughts. These are not just reactions to life. They are the very creators of life as you know it. The mind is the womb of manifestation. Whatever you plant in it, nurture and protect, eventually grows into the visible world. That's why positivity is not just about being cheerful or enthusiastic. It is not shallow optimism. Positivity is a mindset, a posture, a decision to believe in light even while standing in the dark. It is the discipline of anchoring your focus on the possibilities instead of the problems. A positive mind sees challenges as training grounds, not as tombstones. It sees failure as feedback, not finality. It interprets delays as development rather than denial. And it recognizes that even when things are not going as planned, something is still working for good behind the scenes. If you want to change your life, you have to first change the way you think. It begins with what you allow through the gates of your mind, what you listen to, what you meditate on, what you rehearse when nobody is watching. Because your thoughts form the blueprint of your expectations, and your expectations draw the substance of your future. If you expect defeat, you will unconsciously create conditions for it. If you expect favor, you will begin to walk in boldness. Not because magic is in the air, but because clarity is in your mind. Many people are trapped not by physical chains, but by mental ones. They are imprisoned by labels, by fear-based thinking, by patterns inherited from broken environments. But if the gate of the mind opens to light, everything in life begins to shift. You can be in the same house, in the same job with the same people, and yet everything feels new when your perception changes. Your external situation doesn't always have to change. Your interpretation of it does. The power of positivity is not in ignoring reality, but in applying a higher lens to it. It is choosing to believe in purpose in the middle of pain, in progress in the middle of pressure, and in promise even in the presence of problems. You were never meant to be ruled by fear, doubt, or despair. Those are not fruits of your original design. They are the weeds that grow when the garden of the mind is left unguarded. The gate of your mind must be patrolled with intention. What are you letting in? What beliefs are being repeated so often that they've become your inner laws? Because every belief you hold creates a lens through which you interpret people, time, money, pain, success, God, and even yourself. A positive mind is not narrative, it is strategic. It doesn't deny problems. It just refuses to let problems have the final word. It looks for the lesson, the leverage, and the lift in every experience. It knows that every season carries hidden treasures if you search with the right mindset. A positive thinker is not someone who's never hurt. They're someone who chooses not to let the hurt harden them. They reframe, they release, and they rise. Your mind is not just a receiver of thoughts. It is a factory of futures. The conversations you rehearse in your head, the images you meditate on, the voices you give the most volume to. All of these become architects of your world. If you see yourself as stuck, your creativity shuts down. If you see yourself as chosen, your energy rises. If you believe you are equipped, your confidence flows. That's why the gate must be guarded. You cannot afford to allow toxic narratives, fear-based projections, or inherited lies to keep cycling in your head. You must break the agreement with defeat and make a covenant with possibility. There is something about a positive thinker that heaven responds to. Because positivity is the soil where faith grows. It is the evidence of a mind that has chosen to agree with the report of the Lord. When you decide to think in alignment with heaven, you open the gate for divine ideas, solutions, strength, and strategy to flow through you. Your mindset becomes a magnet for miracles, not because you're faking it, but because you're faithful to think beyond what you see. The greatest warfare is not outside, it is internal. It is the battle between the voice that says, you can, and the whisper that says, with God, all things are possible. Positivity chooses which voice gets the microphone. And once you give that voice permission, everything in your body, your decisions, your words, your energy, your habits, begins to align with that truth. You start walking like someone who is expecting good. You talk like someone who believes in victory. You carry yourself like someone who is aware of the divine investment placed inside them. And that energy shifts rooms, attracts favor, and creates movement in places that were once stagnant. So guard the gate. Don't let temporary setbacks build permanent strongholds in your thinking. Don't let discouragement become your doctrine. When the gate of your mind is filled with light, your path becomes clearer. You'll start making better decisions because they're not based on fear but on faith. You'll attract better relationships because your energy is one of growth, not destruction. You'll recognize open doors because you're not focused on closed ones. And you'll rise, not because everything around you changed, but because something within you did. Your life will never rise above your thoughts. It cannot. The mind is the thermostat of your destiny. Set it to faith, set it to light, set it to purpose, set it to heaven. Because once you do, your reality will begin to match the internal temperature you've established. That's the power of positivity. It doesn't wait for the storm to pass. It believes the sun is already rising. You cannot conquer what you keep complaining about. What you continually verbalize, you authorize. Complaining is not just a bad habit. It is the language of captivity. It is the tongue of those who have settled for bondage while blaming the chains. When you complain, you reinforce the reality you say you hate. Your words build walls or pathways, prisons or passageways. And the dangerous part about complaining is that it feels justified. You are hurt, frustrated, overlooked, underappreciated, so it feels natural to voice the pain. But here is the truth: you are feeding what you should be starving. You are rehearsing what you should be releasing. And as long as you keep narrating your problem, you delay your progress. Complaining is not just about expression. It is about focus. It reveals where your eyes are fixed. When the Israelites were delivered from Egypt, they still had Egypt in their mouths. Though their bodies were free, their minds were still bound. And what did they do? They complained. About water, about food, about leadership, about the unknown. And every complaint dragged them closer to death in the desert rather than life in the promised land. What should have taken days took decades, not because of Pharaoh's army, but because of their own attitude. A complaining spirit creates a cycle of stagnation. You walk in circles, reliving the same struggles, not because of a lack of power, but because of a lack of perspective. There are things you cannot conquer because you keep calling them permanent. You keep announcing how big the mountain is, how unfair life has been, how others always get ahead, and unknowingly you have given more glory to your problem than to your promise. Complaining turns your focus inward on what's lacking instead of upward to what's coming. It is the language of fear, entitlement, and spiritual blindness. But gratitude, it is the language of kings. Gratitude is the mindset of those who know that even in the middle of lack, provision is already on the way. Gratitude shifts the atmosphere because it declares, I see something greater even if I don't feel it yet. You must understand this, your words are not just reactions, they are activators. Every time you complain, you empower the spirit of limitation. You make it stronger by feeding it with your agreement. You give the obstacle more room by adjusting your emotions to its presence. But the moment you shift from complaining to declaring, from grumbling to gratitude, everything begins to shift. Gratitude changes your posture. It lifts your eyes. It releases the hand of God. Where complaining delays, gratitude accelerates. Where complaining binds, gratitude unlocks. Because heaven does not respond to the voice of pity. It responds to the voice of faith. And here's the revelation: you don't have to feel like being grateful to be grateful. Gratitude is a decision before it becomes an emotion. It is choosing to say, Lord, I don't see it yet, but I thank you anyway. It is choosing to say, I may not be where I want to be, but I'm not where I used to be. It is declaring, this may look like a valley, but I see victory in it. That is the power of a positive mindset. Positivity does not mean you're blind to struggle. It means you've trained your eyes to find the seed of purpose inside of it. Victory is often hidden in your vocabulary. It's in how you talk about your current situation. If you call it hopeless, you'll handle it with despair. But if you call it a training ground, you'll rise with discipline and purpose. Your words frame your world. The complaint keeps the wilderness alive, but praise parts the sea. Complaining chains you to the past, but gratitude calls you into your future. The door to promise never opens to murmuring, it opens to faith. You were not made to live stuck in a loop of frustration. You are more powerful than your emotions, and your purpose is stronger than your pain. So stop giving oxygen to what you want to bury. Stop watering the weeds with the language of bitterness. Stop giving your power to things you were born to overcome. You don't defeat darkness by describing it. You conquer it by turning on the light. Speak the language of your future. Declare what heaven is saying. Reframe what others fear, because that is the essence of divine mindset, to see what God sees, say what God says, and walk where others hesitate. Positivity is a decision to see the divine in the details. It's the choice to find growth in the grief, direction in the delay, and strength in the silence. When you stop complaining, you reclaim authority. You begin to operate not as a victim of what happened, but as a steward of what's possible. That shift breaks cycles. That shift realigns you. That shift moves you out of wilderness thinking into a land flowing with potential. So hear this clearly: you cannot conquer what you keep cursing with your own mouth. You cannot rise in a place you keep calling broken. You cannot possess what you keep resisting with your attitude. Shift your language. Shift your mindset. Shift your focus. Because the promise is not just waiting for your arrival, it is waiting for your agreement. Atmosphere determines growth. Just as a seed requires the right soil, temperature, and climate to reach its full potential, your vision, your calling, your divine assignment requires the right environment to thrive. You were never created to flourish in negativity, toxicity, or fear-saturated surroundings. You were born to grow in the soil of faith, honor, expectation, and positive reinforcement. Just as a farmer cannot expect a fruitful harvest from poisoned ground, you cannot expect the fullness of your purpose to emerge from a climate filled with doubt, criticism, gossip, and emotional pollution. Growth is not just about desire, it's about environment. Many gifted people live stunted lives not because they lack talent, because they are planted in the wrong place. You could have the anointing of Joseph, the wisdom of Solomon, the dreams of Daniel, and the boldness of Esther. But if you are constantly surrounded by small-minded people, negative voices, faithless conversations, and environments that drain your spirit, your gift will remain buried. The presence of greatness within you is not enough. You need the presence of greatness around you. The enemy knows he cannot steal your purpose, but if he can control your atmosphere, he can suffocate your progress. He'll surround you with doubters who disguise their fear as advice. He'll keep you in circles where celebrating others is rare and criticizing vision is common. He'll make you feel loyal for staying in rooms that God has already told you to leave. And what happens? Your creativity shrinks. Your confidence weakens. Your joy becomes conditional. You begin to question whether what God showed you is even real. But the problem isn't your purpose, it's your placement. The atmosphere is toxic, and toxicity kills silently. You must be ruthless about the atmosphere you allow around your dreams. You cannot afford to keep nurturing divine vision in environments that do not respect or recognize its value. Your vision is sacred. It is heaven's investment in you. And just like precious things are stored in clean, protected spaces, your potential requires an environment that guards it, nurtures it, speaks life into it, and challenges it to grow. Look at the life of Jesus. Even he, full of power and truth, had to leave certain environments. In his hometown, the scripture says he could not do many miracles, not because he lost power, but because of their unbelief. The atmosphere was contaminated by familiarity, and it blocked the flow of what could have been. That means your atmosphere can limit what heaven wants to release through you. Not because heaven is unwilling, but because you are surrounded by unbelief. The miracle was present, but the environment rejected it. That's the danger of a negative atmosphere. It creates resistance to revelation. You need to protect your growth like a gardener protects the roots of a fragile plant. Who speaks into your life? Who surrounds you when you're weak? Who celebrates you when you rise? Who corrects you with love and honor? Because these people, these voices, these influences, they are shaping your climate. And whatever climate you allow, you authorize. Positivity creates an atmosphere where your spirit can breathe again, where vision becomes vivid, where boldness rises, where dreams feel reachable. It opens windows in your mind and allows the sunlight of clarity to flood in. It doesn't mean everything around you is perfect. It means the atmosphere within you is pure. And once your inner climate is right, even if you're surrounded by storms, you can still grow. But the moment you start inhaling the toxins of constant negativity, fear, doubt, or comparison, your internal strength begins to decay. You must understand that you are too valuable to grow anywhere. Even diamonds form under pressure, but only in the right conditions. Your next level requires a new atmosphere. That's why some doors are closing, some relationships are fading, some spaces feel uncomfortable. It's not rejection, it's redirection. God is moving you into climates that match your calling. The right atmosphere will stretch you without suffocating you. It will challenge you without crushing you. It will correct you without condemning you. It will speak life when life feels distant. It will remind you of what you carry even when you feel unworthy. That's what kingdom atmosphere does. It doesn't just let you survive, it positions you to thrive. Don't underestimate the impact of daily exposure. A few minutes with the wrong energy can drain hours of divine focus. One conversation laced with sarcasm and fear can dilute days of faith. And one room filled with jealousy can delay the momentum of your entire season. You must be intentional, you must be protective. Because growth is not automatic, it is atmospheric. So ask yourself, what am I allowing in my space? What sounds are dominating my ears? What words are shaping my thoughts? What relationships are watering my soul or drying it out? Because until you change the atmosphere, the seed of greatness within you will remain dormant. And the world will never experience what God placed in you. But if you will shift the atmosphere, create space for peace, for worship, for declarations, for learning, for laughter, for support, for clarity, then you will see something happen. Vision will sprout again, joy will bloom again, discipline will rise again, and what you thought had died will begin to grow. Not because you tried harder, but because you breathed in a new atmosphere. This is why positivity matters. It is not a weak substitute for faith. It is the ground in which faith takes root. It is the spiritual oxygen that sustains divine ideas. It is the fragrance of environments where God moves freely. And in that kind of climate, potential unfolds, purpose emerges, and destiny begins to breathe. You attract what you are ready for. Life does not give you what you wish for. It gives you what you're prepared for. Heaven does not release resources based on desire alone, but based on alignment. You can cry for increase, pray for favor, and fast for breakthrough. But if your mindset is not in agreement with the assignment, you will miss the very thing that was meant for you. Readiness is not about perfection, it's about position. When your thoughts are in harmony with your purpose, you create a magnetic field in the spirit, one that attracts divine appointments, resources, connections, and doors that no man can shut. You must understand that your thoughts are not neutral. They are signals. They are either signaling that you are available for destiny or that you are disqualified by doubt. You can be anointed but unavailable, gifted but out of alignment. And the proof of your readiness is not your resume, it's your mindset. When your thinking begins to rise to the level of your calling, you unlock the flow of what's been prepared for you in advance. Heaven is organized, it is not random. God is not trying to figure out your future as you go. He already knows the plans He has for you. But the plans require preparation. There is a weight of favor, a depth of influence, and a level of increase that would crush you if it arrived while you were still thinking like the old version of yourself. That's why transformation begins in the mind. It is the mental posture that determines what you're positioned to receive. You attract peace when your thoughts are peaceful. You attract excellence when you think with clarity and conviction. You attract favor when your spirit is expectant and your words are aligned with vision. But when you think small, you repel big. When you speak defeat, you push away opportunity. When you expect rejection, you unconsciously invite it. That's not superstition, that's spiritual law. Just like gravity governs the physical realm, alignment governs the spiritual one. Negativity is not just a bad attitude. It's a blocker, it's a repellent in the realm of the spirit. It sends the message that you are not available for abundance, that you are not ready for next level, that you are more comfortable in comfort zones than in the stretch of destiny. And so, doors remain shut, not because God is withholding, but because you are not aligned to receive. That's why one of the most powerful things you can do is detox your mind, cleanse your expectations, shift your confession, begin to walk, talk, and think like the person who already has what you're praying for. That is the power of preparation. It is not pretending. It is positioning. When you start thinking in alignment with purpose, you don't chase things. They begin to find you. Resources will flow where vision is clear. Helpers will show up where honor is present. Wisdom will be downloaded where humility is active. You don't have to manipulate doors to open when your mindset matches the size of the room on the other side. Too many people pray for elevation while still living in agreement with limitation. They want new relationships, but their thoughts are still tangled in old rejection. They want abundance, but they think like survivors. They want to lead, but they still respond like victims. But the kingdom does not respond to double-mindedness. It responds to agreement. And agreement begins in your inner world, long before anything changes around you. That's why faith and positivity work together. Faith is the substance, the blueprint, the belief in what's not yet seen. But positivity is the container that holds it. It keeps the environment clean, expectant, hopeful, and open. It creates the mental and emotional space for miracles to rest. It says, I don't see it yet, but I'm living like it's already on the way. That's not delusion, that's divine alignment. You don't get what you demand. You get what you demonstrate readiness for. God will not give you something that you don't have the mindset to steward. He loves you too much to elevate you into stress, overwhelm, and identity crisis. So He waits, not because the blessing isn't ready, but because you're not. He waits until your thoughts no longer sabotage your prayers, until your inner narrative agrees with your public declarations, until your spirit is strong enough to carry the weight of what He's about to release. So check your posture. What are you thinking? What are you expecting? What are you rehearsing in your private moments? Because those are the signals you're sending. And if the signal is low, the connection is weak. But if the signal is strong, clear, confident, expectant, then you're sending a message to heaven, I'm ready. And when heaven sees readiness, it responds with release. When you think in alignment with purpose, provision finds you. People are drawn to you. Peace settles on you. Doors open for you. Not because you forced it, but because you prepared for it. You attract what you are ready for, not what you want, not what you dream about, not what you envy in others. Readiness is the womb of manifestation. So align your thoughts with your calling. Align your heart with the assignment. Align your words with the word. And what's been waiting for you will begin to appear. Faith feeds on positivity. It draws strength from the atmosphere of hope. And it grows in the soil of joyful expectation. Faith cannot survive in the shadows of fear or the weight of chronic doubt. It shrivels in the presence of criticism, negativity, and internal contradiction. You cannot claim to believe while constantly declaring defeat. You cannot pray for increase while thinking in lack. Faith breathes in light. It drinks in truth. It flourishes where positivity reigns. Faith is not simply a feeling. It is a conviction that pulls the future into the now. but it needs an environment where it can stretch and take root. That environment is created by your words, your mindset, your emotional energy, and your internal posture. A negative atmosphere suffocates faith. When you continually replay worst-case scenarios, dwell on what didn't work, and speak more about what you fear than what you expect, your faith starts to retreat. Not because God is not willing, but because your soul is not welcoming. Faith is delicate. It needs room to breathe. It needs to be spoken to, nurtured, and protected like a fragile flame that grows into a burning fire. Every positive word you speak, every declaration of life, of trust, of divine timing, is a seed sown into the soil of faith. And the law of the seed is that it will produce after its kind. Positive seeds birth powerful results. When you say, I believe all things are working for my good, you are not just being optimistic, you are activating the supernatural. When you declare, God is faithful to complete what He started in me, you are watering the roots of your future with truth. The power of life and death is in the tongue, not just because of speech, but because of faith. Faith listens to what you say and responds accordingly. If you want your faith to grow, feed it with the language of heaven. Feed it with the promises of God, not the predictions of fear. Feed it with testimonies, not toxic talk. Surround it with voices that call you higher, not pull you back into history. Faith doesn't grow in familiarity, it grows in focus. When you stay fixed on what God said, instead of what your feelings are saying, you begin to build a structure inside of you where faith can rest, rise, and respond. Positivity is not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about holding the belief that even in imperfection, something perfect is being formed. It's about trusting that God is weaving meaning into the mess, and that every delay is a layer in the foundation of destiny. It's about choosing to believe the report of the Lord when everything else says quit. Faith hears beyond the noise. But to hear clearly, the atmosphere must be conducive. Doubt is loud. Fear is persuasive. But positivity silences their influence. It says, I still believe. It says, God is not finished. It says, I refuse to speak death over something that is still becoming. And many people struggle with faith not because they lack belief, but because they live in environments that drain them. You can't build spiritual strength while absorbing emotional toxicity. If your faith is always being questioned, mocked, or challenged, it will shrink under pressure. But if it's surrounded by hope, filled words, encouraging declarations, and positive expectation, it begins to expand. It begins to rise like yeast in good dough. That's why you must be intentional about your diet, not just what you eat, but what you listen to, what you speak, what you meditate on. All of it feeds your faith or fractures it. When Jesus performed miracles, He often cleared the room of those who didn't believe. Why? Because the atmosphere matters. Faith cannot operate in the midst of doubt, soaked thinking. Even Jesus, Son of God, Word made flesh, chose to guard the atmosphere. That tells you something profound. Even supernatural power respects the principle of positivity. If He removed the mockers before the miracle, how much more should you remove voices of negativity before you walk into promise? There is a connection between your confession and your capacity. When you speak life, you create space for God to move. When you declare hope, you invite angels to work. When you smile through storms and say, it is well, you align your heart with heaven's rhythm. And in that rhythm, faith grows. It moves from a whisper to a roar, from a flicker to a flame. But none of it happens in a climate of criticism. You must be relentless about protecting your atmosphere, not for emotional comfort, but for spiritual progress. You see, fear is contagious, but so doubt can spread, but so can joy. Your environment will either infect your faith or ignite it. Choose wisely. Build a life where your words reflect the kingdom you belong to. Don't just speak what you see, speak what He said. That's where faith finds fuel. Faith doesn't ask, is it easy? It asks, is God with me? And positivity is the echo of that confidence. It is the sound of someone who knows that even in the valley, provision is near. So speak boldly, think purely, expect joyfully. Every day, pour positivity into your atmosphere like oil on dry ground. Let your faith feed on truth, on joy, on gratitude. And as it does, you will see mountains move. Not because you pushed harder, but because you believe better. Faith doesn't need force. It needs food. And that food is found in the fertile ground of a positive, powerful mind. Your words are prophecies in progress. Every time you open your mouth, you are not just communicating, you are creating. You are not simply expressing how you feel. You are planting the seeds of what you will later harvest. Life and death are not in your circumstances. They're in your tongue. The power of creation did not leave the earth when God rested on the seventh day. That same creative force was deposited into you when He breathed His Spirit into your body. That breath carries weight. That voice carries influence. And that tongue, small as it may seem, determines the direction of your life like a rudder on a ship. What you declare with belief becomes what you experience by design. Words are not empty sounds. They are spiritual contracts. When you say, I can't, you're not describing a moment, you're building a limitation. When you say, nothing good ever happens to me, you're not just venting frustration. You are writing a script that your life begins to follow. Heaven listens. The atmosphere listens. Your soul listens. And your future responds. Because your words are assignments, they go ahead of you and prepare the way. They build bridges or they burn them. They open doors or they shut them. You may not see it instantly, but every word spoken in faith or fear has an echo in the future. Positivity is not wishful thinking. It is prophetic thinking. It is the conscious decision to speak according to purpose, not pain. It is choosing to align your language with God's promises rather than your temporary problems. Prophets don't describe the present, they declare the unseen. And when you begin to speak like a prophet over your own life, you start shifting the very fabric of your reality. You may be in a storm, but your words say, peace is on the way. You may be facing delay, but your confession is, God is never late. He is preparing more than I can ask or imagine. That is not denial, that is dominion. Your tongue was never meant to just repeat what your eyes see. It was designed to declare what your spirit knows. Too many people live in cycles not because of curses from others, but because of the curses they've placed on themselves through careless speech. I'm not good enough. I'll never recover. This always happens to me. These phrases become chains. They become self-fulfilling declarations. And the spiritual realm honors what your soul agrees with. That's why the enemy is after your words. Because if he can influence your mouth, he can limit your movement. But the moment you shift your confession, you shift your destiny. Begin to speak life even when you feel death. Declare healing even when you see pain. Call forth increase even when the numbers say lack. That is the behavior of someone who understands that words are weapons, that declarations are tools, and that your mouth is not just for description. It's for construction. You are either building or breaking with every sentence. There is no neutral ground. So speak like you are building a palace for your purpose to dwell in. Speak like you are painting the picture of a future where God gets the glory. You must realize that even heaven responds to language. When Jesus spoke, storms calmed, demons fled, dead things returned to life. Why? Because his words carried authority. And if Christ lives in you, then so does that authority. But authority must be activated. It must be spoken. Silent faith is powerful, but declared faith is unstoppable. When you open your mouth with confidence, with clarity, with conviction, you don't just echo your desires, you unleash divine order. Some people are waiting for a new season while speaking the same language that kept them stuck in the last one. You cannot enter into breakthrough while using the vocabulary of bondage. Your language must match your destiny, and that means training your mouth to align with heaven even when your emotions want to align with fear. It means blessing your day before it begins. It means declaring peace over your mind before anxiety has a chance to whisper. It means saying, it is done, while the process is still unfolding. God created the world by speaking it into being, and you were made in his image. That means you carry that same blueprint. Your world is shaped by your words, not just in church, but in traffic, not just in prayer, but in private thoughts. What you rehearse becomes what you release. If you keep talking defeat, don't be surprised when discouragement follows you. But if you begin to declare, I am more than a conqueror, even when you're trembling, watch how strength begins to show up. Speak over your children. Speak over your business. Speak over your body. Speak over your finances. Speak over your marriage. Speak over your creativity. Don't just hope, declare. Don't just wish, prophecy. Let your language reflect your legacy. Let your words be laced with vision, not just emotion. Because when you speak what God says, you invite what God sent. Words matter. They shape identity. They attract results. They influence atmosphere. And they create alignment. You are not just talking, you are planting. You are not just expressing, you are authoring. So take your tongue seriously. Let your declarations become daily rituals. Don't wait for motivation, speak as a discipline. And as you do, your words will go into your tomorrow. Prepare the ground, plant the vision, protect your peace, and position your promise. Your words are not casual, they are spiritual carriers. They bring to earth what already exists in heaven. They are not magic, but they are miraculous. And when spoken in faith, they carry the weight of divine authority. So say what God says. Believe what you speak, and let every sentence be a step into your assignment. Because your words are not just sounds, they are prophecies in progress. My dear brothers and sisters, hear me well. You were never designed to live beneath the weight of fear, the grip of doubt, or the shadow of negativity. You were formed in purpose, filled with potential, and released into time to manifest the will of the King in your generation. But the key to that manifestation is not in your strength, your resources, or your connections. It is in your mindset, your confession, and the atmosphere you create. You are the gatekeeper of your own destiny. Your mind is the soil, your words are the seeds, and your environment is the climate. If you guard your mind, speak with faith, and build the right atmosphere, there is nothing, I said nothing, that can stop the assignment God has placed on your life. Your future is not waiting to be discovered. It's waiting to be declared. You don't need to beg for breakthrough. You need to think, speak, and live in alignment with the kingdom. Stop allowing your past to dictate your posture. Stop rehearsing defeat in a season of divine setup. Stop feeding fear with your words and start fueling faith with your declarations. The power of positivity is not about denying your reality. It is about elevating your mentality. It is the decision to prophesy in the valley, to praise in the silence, to declare light in the darkness, and to speak life when everything around you is calling for death. So I charge you today, take your mind back. Take your words back. Take your atmosphere back. And align yourself with heaven's agenda. Because when you walk in divine agreement, when you think like the King, and when you speak what He has already said, then and only then will your life rise to meet your destiny. This is not motivational hype. It is kingdom revelation. And if you receive it, you will never live on the same level again. Because as a man thinketh, so is he. As a man speaketh, so becomes his world. As a man aligns, so walks his purpose. Think like a king. Speak like a prophet. And live like one who knows you were born to rule.